everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullish Show. Today I have with me Teri Yu. Now, Teri Yu is the founder or founded Vibley, which has just been acquired by Kajabi to shift the mindset within the industry and amplify the power of community. What does that mean? It means that Teri and her co-founders decided that they needed to share the love and actually make it easy for people to create community online instead of the algorithms of the social media giants making it difficult. She now works with a team at Kajabi to ensure creators can engage with the community and get paid. She's incredibly passionate about the power of community, and we're going to hear more about that in a minute, and would love to have a conversation with you about what creators can do to earn living sustainably, burnout, how creators can avoid it, and the startup playbook from idea to ignition. Welcome to the show, Teri. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Now, before we leap into the conversation, I just want to let everyone know too that this can be watched on the Jeff Bullish Show YouTube channel. Just Google the Jeff Bullish Show YouTube and you'll go straight to it, because a lot of people aren't aware that you can both listen or watch or do both at the same time.
I wasn't aware myself.
Okay, Teri. Yeah, I know. That's what I just decided to do. I said, okay, I need to let people know that there is a Jeff Bullish Show YouTube channel, and it's got about 7,000 subscribers. And so, yeah, and a lot of people like to watch rather than listen. So that's good. So, Teri, how did all this happen? How did you start Vibley? Where did the inspiration come from? Because this is always what I find curious, because a lot of people have ideas but never act on them. And ideas are cheap, but action takes effort and time to actually bring to fruition. How did it all start?
Yeah. So when I started Vibley, it was really a problem space that was important to me, that I was really impassioned by this mission to spread happiness, because we had saw this downtrend of people becoming more and more obsessed with their technology in ways that were actually taking away from their ability to be happy. And so because, as I was working in product at Asana, and that was the time when, we did a lot of A/B tests. I was very well learned in the A/B test world, and it became something that was a clear problem to me, where when you're looking at companies like Meta or Snapchat or all these like FANG companies, what they're really optimizing for is session time and dwell time, right? This is how they get more eyeballs, and this then leads to more ad dollars. Therefore, they're always going to try to get you to have more addictive experiences as part of that business model. And so we wanted to create an alternate world where it was really about creating meaningful and social experiences that had real impact to your lives in ways that make you happy over time and sustainably, not just in the moment. So when I started Vibley, it was kind of like mission driven, and it was also based off of some experiences I had. So when I grew up in Arizona, my family actually was really poor, where they immigrated from Taiwan. They came over and, didn't have anything. My dad was washing dishes at the cafeteria. My mom was giving people haircuts and just going door to door trying to find business. And so when they were in that state, what they had was community to really uplift them up as well. So they joined something called the Taiwanese American Association. That was not only just emotional support, but, they helped with networking, they helped with potential job opportunities. And ultimately, my mom became a real estate agent. My dad works as a computer scientist at Intel. So it just really inspired me, and just the power of community and how much that can be life-changing for people, not just like skill sets, but also career and also, quality of life.
Right. It is fascinating, because when I started off and started my blog website back in 2009, the internet was a wild west. I mean, social media was a wild west, and you actually were able to create community without algorithms stopping you. And also at that stage, the platforms weren't designed to be addictive.
Yeah.
And over time, as they became public companies, the goal was to make more money. So design is actually baked into almost every social media platform, like I said, to keep you on the platform, to get you to stay there. And at the end of the day, you are a creator. You're just a product for the platform. And I
Yeah.
love your mission, because for me, there's a great book I read recently called, quite a while ago, called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And I think as humans, we're innately creative. The trouble is that social media wants you to create what I call shallow work rather than deep work. And I think that's where creators, and I really sincerely believe that we are all creators as humans. And I think that you enabling community of creators is just fabulous. So you have this, you've seen real community in terms of in the real live world of, physical world. So, and you looked around and you said, I want to make sure people are happy rather than the social media platforms making them unhappy. What did you mean by that? I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah. So it's hard because happiness is an intangible quality, and you try to put some measure on it. For the big tech companies, it could have been the dwell time, how much they're coming back to it means that they're actually enjoying it. Therefore, that equates to some kind of happiness factor. For us, we knew that model was not working, where we saw so many people who are unhappy. 50% of people reported that they were unhappy in life, and it's just getting worse with screen time, and more like TikTok usage. Gen Z uses like hours and hours of TikTok every day. There's also just COVID has made it so much worse as well, where we're now like used to this habitual staying inside. And at Vibley, we were very much focused on creating connections between people. So at first, we actually started measuring it by in-person events, like how many people are coming together and actually having a great experience in person. So we had that quantitative measure on it. However, when it came to COVID, that actually made us pivot the company altogether. So we powered over 500 of these kind of events. Wow. Then, because of the pandemic, nobody wanted to meet up anymore. No one wanted to have that in person. And so we had to very quickly shift back to online and really focus on the quality of those experiences, which we are now doing through what we call participation in the community. So that means participating in group challenges, participating in events, participating in discussions, like actually getting some value from the community itself is what we value as a team now, to make sure that people are getting enriched with as quality of social connection as possible.
Okay. So what I'm intrigued by is what's the ignition to get people to go from watchers to participants? What are some of these things that you learned to get people to be actively engaged? Tell us about some of the top things that and tactics you use to do that.
Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of creators, and many are, naturally able to pull more. Some are able to pull less. It just really depends on both, kind of the true influence, as well as their reach, as well as a vertical. But there are some tactics that we've seen work very well, converting people from audience to community, which is, one, actually driving real value. So thinking about, okay, if I'm starting a community, what am I actually providing in this that's going to be something that helps someone else, right? What are my members trying to accomplish, and how can I help them with that? So deriving a program around that, make sure that you're actually, giving something that's worthy of purchase price. The second is creating urgency. So, having maybe a expiring offer or a timeline which you can join a cohort, all those kind of things will also drive people to take action now, just because when there's no timeline for anything, people are not going to take action as soon, and then often forget. Especially in this attention deficit economy, we're kind of bombarded by so many things and so many products and so many people, and having that trigger definitely will help. The third is scarcity and exclusivity. As funny as it is, as humans, we all kind of just love the idea of feeling like an insider, or getting exclusive information or access or events. And so thinking about how to create that exclusivity with your community and your program is definitely something that helps a lot. And then the fourth is is social proof. So anything that you can see, any testimonials or any customer references or any kind of proof points that drive credibility of why they should trust that your program stands out against the rest is definitely helpful. So, whether you've been featured on Forbes or you have thousands of members already in the community, or if you have specific customers who are saying like, this was the best program I've ever been in, all those things will drive more people to convert from, your followers to someone who's actually a real lifetime customer.
Okay, yeah, so that's very fascinating. So really, it's create value so people want to actually get engaged. Is that correct? That was the first one. Yes. Scarcity, in other words, a time-limited offer. Exclusivity, belong to this exclusive, maybe even premium club, and social proof of the four.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, so now so you've got this idea. I want to go back to where you actually started. So you got the idea, and how many of you were there when you started?
How many
were you the only founder?
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, we had a co-founder, and it's really nice to have a team around you, although it's not necessary. It just provides more accountability, right? It's a part of the reasons why I worked on Vibley is because I know that, getting accountability from peers and or teammates, it drives you forward in ways that sometimes you can't do as well alone. Mm-hmm. But it's not prohibitive either. Like, I would encourage anyone who doesn't have those resources to not let that prevent them from starting a business. But I will say that I created my own team. I didn't just sit around and hope like, oh, do I know X or Y person? Where do I don't know anyone, therefore I don't start. I went out and messaged people, looked at any kind of marketplaces that link people up. I looked at many different options to see like who is someone that I can actually work with to create a product that's going to accomplish the mission we set out to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And so, I worked with a co-founder. We grew together a team. We started fundraising. We raised over 2.5 million, and then we ended up building the product. And now we've powered thousands of communities, and we are now part of Kajabi.
Yeah, that's fabulous, and it's very interesting to hear about how you went from idea to ignition. Now, a little bit more on that in terms of, so you look around trying to find, I suppose, technology platforms that you could use or are in existence that would enable you to do it. And you discovered that you had to build it yourself. Is that what you discovered?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So we built Vibley after doing a lot of validation. And so that's actually the number one thing that I would encourage any entrepreneur to think about is think about how you can build a minimum lovable product that validates your hypothesis. Or if there are alternate ways to validate your hypothesis, do that as well. So when I say hypothesis, I mean, like, what is it that you think is going to happen based off of the need that you see? Right. So the standard format for a hypothesis can be like, because I believe X, when Y is done, Z will happen. Right. And that gives you the credibility or like the honesty to look back on it and think, hey, okay, I don't know if this, like when I'm taking initiatives, like you can always re-reference this and know like I am spending time in the right areas because I'm actually continuing to validate that hypothesis. Mm-hmm. So once you have that, think about ways to validate it. So it could be the building a minimum lovable product to start, or it could be, growing an audience and thinking about like validating that hypothesis through an Instagram account or Facebook group, something that doesn't require a lot of like commitment and money or time, but maybe a way for you to see if there's any real interest beyond just what you think may happen. And some ways to do this are also creating a landing page and collecting email addresses before you start the business, right? There's no reason why you can't start on the distribution strategy before you actually create and invest money into the product. And I would run Facebook ads or any kind of ads against it to kind of validate, do people click this? Do people actually put in their email address. Like, okay, I have a list of 1,000 people now who have told me that they wanted this thing. That gives you like lower risk when you're starting and you're starting forward. Then there's also things like, like talking to people. So you can talk to, say you talk to over 100 people, all of them give you the heck yes, I'm going to buy this thing. Like, send me the link. I want to buy it now. That's the max amount of signal you could get to actually start on forward on your business without having much risk. So hopefully those strategies are helpful.
Oh, that is really great. I'm always curious about where did you start and how did you start? So a little bit more on that in terms of, did you create a landing page to see if people would actually put their email address in? And what was the incentive? Was there an incentive for them to put their email address in? Is that how you start? Is that how you started?
Yes. So we did start with a landing page and we promoted it in a Facebook group. So that was the initial stages of it. We did not give people incentives on the landing page besides the value proposition. And this is really important. You don't want to give an extra incentive because that will muddy up the signal that you use to determine whether or not this is worth doing, right? So let's say that you gave people $100 for signing up. Do they want the $100 or do they want your business, right? So it's better to keep it isolated. The variable should be as clean as possible so that, it's just the premise of what you want to do. So for example, I am thinking about whether or not I would write a book, but confidentially. And so instead of me writing it up front, what if I created a landing page where I had the book title, the book cover pre-designed, collected email addresses up front on a landing page and kind of ran tests against it to see if people actually had interest in the actual concept of the book. Then once I write it, my time is well spent instead of the other way around where I write the book after a year, after 2 years, then people, have no interest in the concept whatsoever. And I am, left not as happy as I could have been.
Yeah, I like that. That's really a fascinating, insight about muddying the waters. So yes, if you offer a free ebook, you don't know whether they want the free ebook or they're actually bought into the idea. Is that correct?
Exactly. So for the purposes of the test, it's all just about getting the information and insight about whether or not this is worth the risk, right? So you don't want to give extra things. In a different case where you have a landing page and you're actually, you've already started the business, you're just trying to get as many leads as possible and that's the goal, then that's different. You can provide all the incentives you want to get those leads because business is business. But in the experiment phase, we do not want to muddy things up.
I'd like that insight. That is really cool.
And for what it's worth, that's actually why I was so excited to join Kajabi because they have all these tools. So for example, you can start the landing page, and I'm actually creating the landing page on Kajabi right now for the potential book, where you collect all the email addresses. And then once I have them, from possibly like speaking at engagements and like getting interest and seeing how people, respond to it, just like in one-on-one conversations. Then I can also start, an email drip campaign, set up these funnels where, I send the first email asking for feedback, or the second email, I, get people to tell me what other concepts they might be interested in, whatever it is. That can all be set up within Kajabi. And as soon as it's released, I can leverage all those tools and just kind of make it part of my business.
All right, cool. All right, I want to get to Kajabi and what it provides for our listeners and viewers in a few minutes. Now, what I'm really curious about is the test, all right? Because a lot of people, I think what we're going to do with the test, just like you described, is we've got to make sure we've got the hypothesis right. We want to test an hypothesis. You want to make it as simple as possible, as low cost as possible, so that the taking it from idea to ignition is as easy as possible.
Exactly.
So what is your level of success? What point you're going, this is resonating? Is there a number? So for example, when you test, you take a Facebook ad and you drive it to the page and you're going, okay, so you're looking just for click-throughs, aren't you, really? Is that correct? That's it?
Yeah, so it depends on the experiment setup. But you want to think about it before you run the experiment. what would give me confidence that this is something that people actually want? So if you predefine it and you set a success metric, so let's say I want 100 signups before I feel like this is worth my time, or I want a click-through rate of at least 1% before I invest more. Then those can be your success metrics. I would look at benchmarks, like when you just Google like benchmark click-through rate, you can find potential comparisons that can give you an early bar of what to look for. I recognize this is like not an easy early thing because you don't know what you don't know. Like it's not like you've had previous company history to reference, but use others to try to figure it out. You might want to, message people and ask, like, let's say you know someone who works at a company or has started a company, like, what was your initial click-through rate? Like, what did you look at? Those can give you insights. But otherwise, if you have no additional inputs, I would just focus on what would make you feel like you want to invest whatever you're going to invest. So let's say you're spending $20,000 on building a mobile app. What amount of confidence would give you like the full fuel to be able to move forward and spend that $20,000?
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's interesting in terms of benchmarks, and benchmarks are like, they're so fluid, and they also depend on and vary with industry.
Yeah.
So I love the term used before, I think it was, because you've got a minimal viable product as an MVP. That's tossed around a lot.
MVP, that's right.
Okay.
But then MLP is like just one step above.
Okay, so you've got then the other one, which I think, I don't know if we mentioned it, might be hidden in dispatches, but minimal testable product.
Interesting.
MTP. And the other one, which is, like you said, the step above, is the MLP, minimal lovable product.
I wonder if minimal testable product is the same as minimal lovable product, because you do need something that's lovable enough to be tested is kind of the concept. You don't want to spend too much time like creating something that's so lovable that, you've invested all this time, resources, energy into something that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
But I think the concept may be similar.
Yeah. Minimal lovable product is where the potential customer loves it, not you. And I think it's detaching yourself from you loving it. So you actually throw all the money at it, maybe, as a definition.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the percentages are interesting. I've come across a company that and basically as an entrepreneur now, especially in online business, is you can test almost everything. So the data is going to tell you what works and what doesn't. And then there's just gradations of from really works well to sort of works well. So what sort of numbers were you looking for initially in terms of click-through rate? Was it 1% or was it 5%? Was it 10%?
Yes, good question. It was quite a while ago, so I'll tell you what I recall, but I don't know how accurate it is.
This is not a test.
It's been 5 years. So honestly, it's a hard thing to remember early on, but I think it was around a 5% click-through rate. Because I had looked at benchmarks and saw like for social mobile apps that it was around 2% at max. And so because I was posting in a Facebook group that has like higher relevancy, I wanted to see something like quite indicative before I move forward, just because I knew I was going to invest a lot of my life, a lot of my time and resources. So you could kind of look at like how much you're investing as a risk like reward calculation as part of that decision.
Okay. Yeah, I think 5 to 7 is a really good number. It's like if I can get 5, that's pretty good. And then, okay, can I change the headline, or will that get me 7 or 6?
Yes, exactly. So if you change the headline to a different premise altogether, or if there was just a slight spin on it and that changes things, you will feel a lot more confident that this next direction is going to be better for a better performing business concept.
Yeah, exactly. So the next step is, so you've built this minimal product.
Yeah.
Whatever they call it, viable, testable, whatever.
Viable, testable, lovable. Yeah. Lots of things.
Okay. So where'd you go? All right. We've tested the hypothesis. We believe on benchmarks that we've seen in the industry or in industries, online industries, that looks like it's got wings. So when did you go to start looking for venture capital funding to get that 2.5 million? When did you do that?
Yes. So I believe that startups are just a collection of believers that eventually become such a mass market of believers that you actually have like a global product market fit. Yep. So at the beginning, it was all about finding a team for me. So what I did was I ran these tests and I used the information we had around from the tests to recruit people, right? That is what I took to our co-founders, potential teammates to say, look, I'm not just a random business idea that you hear a dime a dozen of every day. I have something that, has proof that it's going to potentially work. And so you can really use that as a recruiting tactic as well. Then after I had the team and then we kept building, like there was a point where, we needed to start raising money. And that was when we felt like we could grow a lot faster with the additional resources that we got. And so it was our pre-seed round that we raised initially $500K or a little bit over. And it was just us, like we had users, we had creators, we had a product a little bit above an MVP at that point, and we were growing. So that's when I wanted to raise the pre-seed, because I knew if you put gas on that fire, it could really blow up a lot larger. And so then we kept building within that time frame after pre-seed, and then eventually we hit enough of our milestones where we're like, okay, I think we can even grow faster, hire more people. Let's press on the gas even more. And that was when we raised our over $2 million round. So I have a different sort of philosophy than the average Silicon Valley founder, I'd say. I really believe in building a product and validating and finding like growth and product market fit as much as you can before you go guns blazing, trying to find capital. Because I've heard and seen too many stories now of companies that have self-imploded because they raised all this money, didn't really have anything, and then, weren't able to figure it out. And actually the massive expenses they incurred from the lack of creativity and out of the box thinking just was part of the reason why the business couldn't succeed.
Yep.
An example of this is, what was it? What was that company recently that exploded?
Okay, there was a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them exploded.
All the time, basically. Yeah.
So yeah, I like that approach, because in other words, you're going, okay, we're going to build this minimal viable product. We're going to test it. We're going to drive traffic to it. And we're going, okay, we're getting 5 to 7% click-throughs, for example. But the question I had too on that is the cost of advertising can be prohibitive now, because Facebook and other social media platforms have pushed the price of advertising up because they can, because they've got the community you want to reach, which Facebook, for example, is 3 billion people. It's targeted, it's great. Did you use any other marketing methods beyond paid? Because did you do any referral marketing? Did you do any text marketing? Did you do any team up with other partners that were already talking to your potential audience that you could leverage? Did you do any of that as well?
Our primary method was actually Facebook group partnerships to start. And we didn't do the Facebook ad method as much, just because we were extremely cash sensitive at that point. But I think there's a number of ways you could potentially do this. Text marketing is not as efficient as you would think. Maybe if you use, a different text blast messaging service. However, texts are really sensitive from a legal perspective. You can't just text anyone a marketing message.
No, you can't. No.
Yeah. So I wouldn't recommend that so much. I think in today's age, I would probably start with either TikTok and or Instagram, thinking about, okay, where are people today? How can I reach them? How can I get the message out to them so I can see whether or not this has legs?
Okay, cool. All right. So you raise the money, you say, okay, now we need to double down on building the product out. So, and a lot of people don't understand software. Did you understand software? Did you get someone who was a good software architect that could map out the software development journey? How did that go?
Yeah, so I have an understanding of software because I've been building in this for a while. So I worked in startups, I worked at Microsoft, I worked at Asana building product. And so I know strategically how to go about it, but I'm not a coder myself. Like I can do front end coding and that's about it. And so I needed engineering partners to get this done. And so in Silicon Valley, especially, it's really hard to recruit this kind of talent because they literally have golden handcuffs where they're paid, $300K or above for their job at these big companies. And so how do you convince them that this mission is really worth it, or this company is really worth their time? And so that is all about, I think, number one, honing your message in, making sure that you actually know like how to pitch in ways that resonates. So whether that's with current trends in the market, any proof points that you have, any kind of credibility that you have, like those are all things that are going to help you recruit. Same concept actually as converting your audience.
It is.
Too. Yeah, sounds similar, right? But yeah, giving them that confidence, and then presenting yourself in a way that's very much, you have conviction, right? Because you when you're the founder, you carry the belief system of everyone around you, whether that's the first person that you hire or that's like the 1,000th person on your team. If you are really miserable and not carrying the weight of the confidence of your company, then everyone else, like, how are they supposed to believe that they're on a journey that's going to make it? So using those same tactics, I kind of approached and kind of like persuaded people to join the team. And that kind of went there.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, as a CEO, co-founder, founder of any business, whether it's Silicon Valley startup like you've done, you've got to be the evangelist, don't you?
Yes. The number one job, evangelist, right? And that comes with evangelizing the mission to investors, to recruits, to customers. Like you are the only person who can speak for just how much value your company can bring to the world.
Yeah, and then getting your message right becomes also a big. I'd be interested, and that's going to ask you the next question, because that's raised by, I know Melanie Perkins, who's one of the co-founders of Canva in Australia, Australian company. They've been quite a success story. She actually presented a little workshop I ran in Sydney about 7 or 8 years ago, and came along and did a quick presentation just when they were starting out, really. So, but I remember her telling me, I think she said she put together 40 different versions of a pitch deck. How many pitch decks did you put together?
Well, I definitely put multiple versions together, not 40 though. That is simply amazing. I think she has we both have challenges in fundraising because honestly, it's not as easy, in my opinion, to raise venture capital as a female as it is a male, simply because investors are all pattern matching and they're asking themselves, is this the next Mark Zuckerberg, or is this the next like Travis Kalanick? And you as a woman don't look like or exhibit the potential like masculine traits they're looking for to say that you are cutthroat enough or you're going to like bash through walls to make it happen. But in terms of my advantage over Melanie is I live in San Francisco, which is the center of startups. Whereas in Australia, there's less of that like tech optimism, at least from like investors there, or maybe even less investors. Is that true?
There's less investors, and also we don't have the population. So Australia's population is 25 to 26 million, right? So I think there's actually more people in California. I think there's 50 million in California, I think, and it's the second. If California was a country, I think it'd be either the third or fourth biggest economy in the world. So yes, you're in the heart of essentially one of the top countries in the world where money is tech optimism, which you rose, which is true as well. So the next question I have is, how'd you get, so you got the you tested the hypothesis, you got a minimal viable product, you raise some money, then you start creating the tech, and quite often it's an arms race. It's a sales and marketing race, and it's a technical arms race as well. You're trying to build a product that's robust, works, delivers a great experience, frictionless as possible. When did you get to a point going, this is really, ignition took off? In other words, you said, this is really, really working. And because you mentioned that, I think when Kajabi bought you, that you were getting something like 59% month-on-month growth.
Yeah.
That tells me you've hit ignition. So when did that happen? When you said you got that aha and you go, we've really got something here. When did that happen? And what numbers were you looking at?
Yeah, so that happened last July in 2021. And we were looking at this growth. Like, our company objective was all about revenue growth, about participation growth, and we're seeing all the signs point upwards and on a consistent basis. So that's when, you really feel like you have something. I think as a founder, I tend to be very, let's say, harder on myself. And so prior to that, did I really 100% think that we had something? I don't think so. I think we have proof at points that it could be something, but the point where I actually felt like, okay, this is real and this is growing, is that inflection point in July.
Right. Which was like you're getting that 50% plus month-on-month growth.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Now, let's move on to the next topic of interest. I'm quite selfish here. I'm just asking questions that I really care about. So business models. These are interesting because there's business models online can vary a lot. So what was the business model for Vibley?
Yes. So since we were a platform for creators to start intimate interactive communities, our revenue model was actually a take rate. So we made it free for creators to start a community and have a community. However, if they were monetizing it and taking payments through our system, we would have a share rate of anywhere from 10 to 20%, mostly 20%. Whereas Kajabi has more of a software subscription model. So creators will pay a monthly basis to Kajabi. However, I will say that after seeing both sides of the world, it is actually way more favorable for creators to pay the subscription service instead of sharing, because once you start sharing, 10 to 20% of your business becomes a lot of money that you start feeling resentment for, having to share when you're the one like kind of powering this entire business. So, we've had a lot of internal discussions about like what are the right models for creators. And ultimately, I do believe Kajabi has the right pricing setup that benefits creators long term, not just looking at the kind of the short term of getting people in and then like taking from them in the future.
Right. So seeing Vibley's been brought into the Kajabi fold, is Vibley an additional premium add-on option to Kajabi, or is it wrapped up in just the general features?
So we discuss this a lot internally. It is completely complementary to all Kajabi users. So the whole ecosystem, coaching, community, podcasts, email marketing, landing pages, all of that is for a set subscription price on a monthly basis, not additional add-ons with these features. So I think a lot of creators have been really happy about it so far. So I think we made the right move.
Right. Now, the thing we didn't touch on, which you mentioned at the beginning, is that building community is sometimes a tough gig. And we mentioned about the different options to get them to go from, lurkers to participants, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, and we mentioned those four, which is value, time scarcity, exclusivity, and social proof. What are the features within Vibley that you also had there? And you mentioned things like competitions and other things. What were some of the features that you developed within Vibley to get people to, I suppose, stick In other words, what's the stickability? In other words, you want to, because one big challenge for any subscription model or any software model online is churn. Yeah. How do you stop them churning? What are the features and within Vibley that you developed and tested, I'm sure, over time to keep people from leaving? And also, as well, we talked about the engaging. We've got them engaged. Now, what were the different features within Vibley that you had?
Yeah, so we definitely saw that as people engaged more, they retained more. And that makes sense. I think the feature that we saw the highest kind of engagement patterns was challenges. So that's one of our most loved features. You have this ability as a community host to run group challenges where everyone is on a 7-day meditation challenge together, or you're doing weekly, growth setting of goals together, or you're checking in on a weekly basis. Whatever it is, having a way for people to interact, support each other, share their progress, track their progress has been such a huge and vibrant engagement driver in each community. So we really encourage creators to tap into and lean into the kind of the challenges that give you accountability, that give you like the actual progression in your skill set that you're trying to learn.
Okay. So within Vibley, did you also offer, facilitate is maybe the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So you must have, as you help people build their own communities and then provide premium communities that they then paid for. And then you took a snip of the ticket on the way through. Did you provide and work out best practice for those community creators that are adding value and creating community for themselves, which is obviously you're a community for communities.
Yeah.
So were there any best practices that you sort of made available, or did you encourage people like you need to be able to facilitate this group and show up every Wednesday or show up every Monday, which makes it, that's great, but then that's hard to scale because as a community leader, you are the brand quite often.
Yeah.
And that's hard to scale.
Yes. Yeah. So we do have best practices, and those best practices do lie in the feature sets that we have today. So anything that drives peer-to-peer like engagement that scales beyond just you, we highly encourage. So of course, videos and lives are available and awesome within Kajabi community /Vibley now. But the discussions, the kind of like the accountability through challenges is what really makes it interesting, where as a creator, you set these up as a one-time thing, or you set it up, on a like low maintenance touch basis, but the most of the value that people are getting are from each other, not from you.
Right. Okay. In other words, the community itself becomes the fire.
Yes, exactly. And that's everything we've ever wanted to build, was allowing people to build those kind of connections between each other to really make sure that they have more like relationships and fulfillment in their lives to accomplish their goals. It shouldn't just be about the creator, right? We've heard so much about creators having this like parasocial relationships with their audience, and that's great, but also not sustainable, right? People want to have something that's actually going to be life-changing for them in ways beyond just you.
Yes, totally. And that's I've experienced that over the years, is that otherwise you're trading time for money. You can't scale you, and that's a real challenge. A lot of people are happy with that, but then it doesn't scale well if you really want to make a bigger difference and scale it to a much bigger community. Exactly. So that raises another question in terms of making sure that, getting to a point where the community is self-sustaining and feeds on itself in a nice way. I mean, what sort of numbers do you really think you need in a community before it starts to really be self-sustaining rather than creator driven?
Yeah, so I can tell you it's not membership count based, meaning it's not how many people are in your community, but it's about the value of the connections themselves. Okay. So for example, we've seen communities that are 10,000 plus members. We've also seen communities that are I'd say like 20 people, and those 20 people communities can actually do extremely well because the members truly are supporting each other, helping each other, check in with each other, helping, answer questions and give tips. And as long as the community is engaged, that's what matters.
Okay. So you have engagement metrics that you can measure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What are those engagement metrics? You've mentioned some of them. Is there a top 5 that you think are really, really important in terms of getting that community really engaged? Because obviously we're not talking about numbers as a metric that's important. It's actually engagement metrics. Is that correct?
Yeah. So in Vibley, we actually have a stat center where it allows you to track things that we've seen as important, which is, messages sent between the community, which is challenge participation. Those are the 2 that we really focused on because it allows for that peer-to-peer scalability, the way that we discussed.
So one is so challenge participation. What was the other one?
It is messages sent. So how many people actually interact with each other, participate in discussions. And that's across both DMs and also within like the group discussions that are available within the
platform. So they're your top 2 engagement metrics that you have in your dashboard.
Exactly. Cool. Exactly. So just think about it intuitively, right? If you have a member who's talking all the time, like posts 5 times a day, participates in all the challenges, they're really getting value from the community in ways that would be sour for their life if they actually left at that point.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. And really, really cool. Just because there's metrics for everything. And the trouble is with data is that you can be overwhelmed by it. So I think what we as online entrepreneurs need to work at is we need to work out data that matters.
Yeah.
And data that, and it was interesting talking to someone else the other day on a podcast here, and they said that they would recommend 2 types of dashboards. This is more for enterprise level than anything else. In other words, you want the big view, and then you maybe want a more granular view dashboards. In other words, can you create a dashboard that gives us a big picture, which is more for the executives, and then you've got the other one more for, I suppose, people that got to look after the detail every day. So, right. So, what I'm curious now about, because I use the word curious all the time, it's overused. I need to find another word, really. So, you've built it. You start to get critical mass. Did you go to market to sell, or you got approached?
Good question. So we actually had a Series A term sheet, and we were thinking about whether or not we should continue to raise more capital since we were growing. And this was before kind of the market downturn. And then because the valuation was like good, but not something that I was particularly, just off the walls happy about, that's when I started entertaining the offers that came to us. So we did get our first offer just from our, the people in our network who had seen Vibley grow and had heard about us. And then after that, that's when, because I'm more of like a maximalist and opportunist, I wanted to see what other opportunities there were out there.
Yep.
So that's when I started, reaching out to companies myself to say like, hey, this is something that we're potentially exploring. Which one makes sense to you? At the end of the day, we did get 5 offers. Which was really exciting. And the last 2 that we're really thinking about, we ultimately chose Kajabi just because they've powered over 4.1 billion in creator revenue, and 1 in 3 creators make over 6 figures. So it's really one of the only companies in the creator economy that is walking the walk and truly empowering the future of work.
Right. So are you on golden handcuffs?
Depends on what you mean there, but yeah. Kajabi's not holding me hostage, if that's
Well, quite often there's, when you sell something and you're the founder, they quite often like to hang on to you because you're the genius behind the brand. And
I'd like to think so.
Well, I think you should be very proud of what you've done and created. And and I like the approach too, in terms of how can you start something as simply as possible, test a hypothesis, and then take it from there, rather than going, I've got a great idea, let's go and get some venture capital. And I think most of the time those sort of approaches end in tears. Whereas if you are a little bit more patient and willing to test first and then hit the accelerator next, whether you fund it yourself or get someone else to be involved in funding. I think so. And I think it's a more enjoyable approach. Otherwise, when you get a lot of money, and I've heard it from people going, once you get a lot of money, there's so much pressure on, because now you've got to deliver, and you're going, well, what's the hypothesis again? So what you've done, I think, is a really, really great approach. And I think it comes back to one of what I see as one of your values in life is to, how can I live sustainably and be happy rather than just make money? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good observation. Yeah.
So what makes you happy?
Oh my gosh. So I am an extrovert by default. I love being around people. It's why Vibley and now Kajabi mean so much to me. So I just want to be learning people's backgrounds, hearing their stories. I'm sure you get to do this every day, but it's so fascinating to me to just hear different perspectives on things and really like internalize them and make that part of my journey as well. So I truly believe that, everyone has this like interesting story behind them, and I'm always on the quest to figure that out. But that gives me happiness.
So you're curious, so that drives learning.
Yes, absolutely.
You sound like you're a great observer and listener, and then you learn out of that. And then what I've also observed is that you not only think of an idea, you actually act on it.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people struggle with the acting part because they get into this decision paralysis where they don't know, what's next or how to act. But once you just go out there and do it and take the first step of whatever it is, you'll learn and figure out if that is the right step and feel better about the next one. So, it's always those small steps that make the biggest difference.
I think, it's maybe an overused phrase, but there's joy in the journey. And and what I mean by that is that I go, okay, here's an idea to grow what I've started. Okay, let's try this tactic. So that's one thing per day. And there's a great book called The One Thing, which, in other words, we can be consumed by so many things we feel overwhelmed, but we can say, I just want to do one thing today that's going to move the dial. Yeah. Will this work or will it not? And I think that's what I'm really have enjoyed in my entrepreneurial journey is, will this work? And I'm curious. And data also incentivizes me in terms of, wow, okay, I wrote something that actually resonates.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about social media, is that no longer did you have the gatekeepers, the media moguls stopping you reaching a community. You actually now are able to reach the community. And that's what you've done with Vibley, is that you're going, I really want to create communities that matter, that make a difference, that create happiness. How can I do that, but not be this just all about making money? And I think that's the thing as humans, we're all still trying to work out.
Yeah. There's enough companies out there that, don't focus on that, right? We need beneficial, positive companies in our lives. And I think right now is the time where this is, you can do it. You can stand out if you take that first step.
Yeah. So another question on happiness. So what are some of the things that you do every day that bring you happiness, that you choose to do and have designed your life around? What are some of the things that bring you joy every day? What in your routine?
So what I've learned from this whole entrepreneurial journey is that I thought I was very results focused, and all I wanted was to accomplish one goal or two goals or three goals. And it kept escalating where every time I accomplished something, I didn't feel any happier. So, we were featured in TechCrunch and Forbes before. That's all I thought I ever wanted. And once it happened, I didn't feel any happier because of it. When, we wanted to accomplish a revenue goal. Once we hit it, that didn't make me any happier. I was just thinking about the next thing and worried whether or not we're going to hit the next milestone. And so you're so right when you say that the enjoyment is literally in the journey itself. It's so hard to realize, but so many founders post-exit actually go through severe depression, where they've lost their purpose in life overnight. They feel like, their influence, their purpose is gone. People say all the time, it feels like you're losing your baby, even the ones with, $1 billion outcomes. And so it really like at the end of the day, I think humans just want to like grow and like be making progress. And so that's all you can really ask for in your own life. And I think the more that we come to terms with that, the happier we'll be.
It's a paradox, isn't it? You want more, but when you get there, you realize that
we're happy. Yes.
You're not
I just started comparing myself to all my founder friends who were raising, Series C rounds or had hit this like 100 million revenue mark. And, it's an endless game that you can play. And at the end of the day, that's not truly what makes humans happy. The real happiness comes from your own fulfillment and your growth and the pleasure of like building and creating potentially.
I totally agree. The joy is in the creating.
Yes.
And as you create, you learn. And as you learn, you grow. Yeah. That's where deep joy sits.
Yes. And it's so hard to realize that, but that's truly, truly after this entire experience, what I realized.
Yeah. Well, it's just so good to listen to your journey and your experience along the way and what you've done. Some of the tips and tactics I am going to apply to what I do because there are some really good ideas. Look, I've heard a lot of them, but I think you put a certain spin on it in terms of that. I think a lot of our listeners and viewers will love as well. So
yes. I encourage you to start validating on Kajabi because it's definitely a place where it gives you all the tools to do that. So if you haven't already, I'd love for you to join us.
All right. So let's just wrap it up with that then. Let's go to, all right. So give us a quick thumbnail sketch of what Kajabi does and how it enables people to create an online business.
Awesome. So Kajabi is where creators start businesses. So we work with creators like 𝓵𝓵 with 7 million subs, 𝓵𝓮𝓪𝓻𝓷 with 12 million, but even creators of all sizes like 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓽 with 150K subscribers, or, anyone with even a small audience who's a coach or author definitely, can make a living on Kajabi. So like I mentioned, we have powered over 4.1 billion in creator revenue. And that comes from all the tools that you have available, which is coaching, courses, podcasts, websites, email marketing, community. And we're really excited because this is actually the future of where work is going to be. Most people are now entrepreneurs or are, creators in their own right. Like the traditional model of working at a company is not necessarily what people want to do anymore. And so it's an exciting time to be part of that like tailwind of growing number of creators out there and really helping them build a sustainable business.
Yeah. And it's never been a better time to start, is it?
Yeah. So many resources, tools available to you. You can anything you want on YouTube. You can watch as many people and learn from as many people as you want, but you could also have the tools at your disposal to validate without taking too much risk.
Yeah. And because a lot of tools are either low cost or free even, and also easy to use. In other words, use this, and software is now driving the digital economy. It's like the geeks have inherited the earth. So the reality is that it's never been a better time to start. And that's what I encourage all my listeners and viewers. And thank you very much for coming on the podcast, because we try to encourage everyone to start, and sometimes I just need a little nudge to get them over the starting line. So thank you very much, Teri, for your time. It's been absolutely fabulous.
Absolutely. It was such a fun time to be here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.